Hello, and thank you for joining us for the Learn and Growing 2021 presentation, Office Hours Outside the Box. My name is Julia Lyman, and I am a member of the customer support team here at Hawks Learning. Our presenter today is Dr. Lynda Mae. Lynda Mae is a principal lecturer at Arizona State University with a PhD in social and personality psychology. She also specializes in consulting for publishers on the conceptualization and gamification of engaging interactive learning activities. We will have a live Q&A session with Dr. Mae today, so please enter any questions into the Q&A as we go, and we'll get them at the end of the presentation. Now I will hand it over to our presenter. The floor is yours, Professor Mae.
Thank you so much, Julia. Yes, I am Dr. Lynda Mae. I'm from Arizona State University. It's about 103, I think we're going to make today here. But I love this idea of these mini webinars, these 15-minute webinars, I think can be especially creative. And this one I'm doing today is to office hours outside the box, how to think differently about our office hours. So have you ever scheduled office hours for students just to find yourself doing other work the entire time? The idea of visiting a professor can be intimidating for some students. I'd like to explore a number of ways to entice students to our office hours, starting with more conventional ideas and working our way to more creative ones. Some ideas may jive with your personality, some may not. But hopefully this presentation will get everyone's creative juices flowing and prompt everyone to think outside the box when it comes to office hours. So let's start out with some more conventional ideas. Students are not always aware of the many functions of office hours. Some of them believe that this is just a venue for students to ask questions about the class material. And if they were to use them for any other reason, this would be a social faux pas. Some are surprised to find that they can just comment on and discuss the class material, or to come to get advice on study habits or tips on things they can do now to be more competitive down the road when applying to grad school and applying to careers in the field, questions about careers in the field, and so on. What about just getting to know your professor and vice versa? So I like listing all of these, making them all clear on the very first day of class. Now, how about choice of modes? One thing that students loved during the pandemic was the chance to visit office hours without leaving their home, over Zoom, of course. Well, some professors offered this option of remote office hours before the pandemic, many did not. Yes, in-person office hours are personable, but consider the time and effort required of some students who are coming from the other side of campus, walking all that way, locating your building, and you're locating your office within the building. And if it's their first time, likely getting lost at least once, if not more, on the way. So you might want to consider offering both modes, in-person or Zoom, give them that choice when it's safe to do so. Now, in addition to offering both modes, I also post a campus map showing my building and a building interior map showing my office location for students coming on foot, making it as quick and easy for them as possible. Navigating campus can be especially challenging to freshmen. I don't know about you guys, but our campus is 664 acres. And it amazes me how many of the buildings only have a name posted on one side. Imagine navigating that for the first time in 108-degree heat. Little gestures, also like providing maps, can really send a message to students that you really want them to come. You are sincerely hoping that they do. Sometimes students also have this stereotype of a professor who is so interested in their research that anything to do with class or office hours or trying to brush off like a fly, right? So these little gestures can be really important to communicate that you really want them to come. You really want to meet and chat with them. How about a bribe? So I'm not above a bribe. In fact, student groups discovered long ago that one way to guarantee good turnout at their events is offering free pizza. Using a simple bribe can be an easy way of making your office hours more appealing. If you are not able to fund feeding your entire class something like pizza, you can limit quantities. So I've been known to message my entire class just as my office hours begin that a cinnamon roll is awaiting the first 6 students to attend. And even if nothing else, I usually have a bowl of bite-sized chocolates or the little individually wrapped like airplane cookies, right, on my desk with a please take one sign. This, by the way, can be really fun to switch out with Smartie rolls during finals week and see if any students catch on, or actually prescribe them. Take 1 or 2 Smarties as needed each day of your finals when you send them on their way. But think about this. At the very least, bribes like these will convince students that you really do welcome them to your office hours. You really do want to spend time with them. And at the most, it could be the deciding factor for a student who was on the fence and considering coming. Okay, how about changing up the turf? You know, while office hours are usually held in our offices on our turf, in other words, why not consider offering some on students' turf? I used to hold some of mine at a mid-campus coffee shop, which further sends a message that they can just stop by to chat. Since that coffee shop has become too crowded, I've switched to a student study location in our student union building. Going out to meet students on their turf instead of always expecting them to come to yours can show effort on your part. Also, my favorite student study location to use actually has easy chairs and a fireplace, which can create a great kind of fireside chat aura. How about moving them outdoors? Okay, why not during great weather? This can be a great way to feature sites on your campus too. On ours, for instance, I could specify a certain location on our famous palm walk, a specified table outside of our new campus pavilion, and even on the steps of our campus art museum. If your institution offers any fully online degrees, by the way, this can really foster campus pride in those online students who may not have really connected to the campus otherwise, have never been there. It makes it feel more like their campus when you share these views with them. It even inspires some of them to take a trip and come visit usually with their families, at some point to see the campus sites in person. What about moving them off campus? Many college towns have a great downtown area. Here at ASU, I will sometimes hold my office hours on the outside patios of a downtown Tempe coffee shop or a restaurant where they don't mind loungers. Now, I would never spring this on a restaurant. Instead, I talk to them, request this and arrange this in advance. Oftentimes, restaurants don't mind loungers in the slower afternoon hours if you ask and arrange this with them in advance. Others are even eager to host, realizing that this is actually free advertising for them. How about a dog park? Encouraging students to bring their dogs. Special bonds are formed between pet lovers, whether you have one or not. Pets just bring something out in people. And a chance to introduce your dog to your professor, who could resist that? I've even had students borrow a dog to come, and some who came to show me pictures of their cats. And I had one a couple of years ago who brought his turtle. Okay, talk about an icebreaker. Okay, let's move on from outdoors or off campus here. What about face filters? How about using face filters during your Zoom office hours? A particularly zany idea practiced by a colleague of mine is using a silly face filter during Zoom office hours to lighten things up a bit. Now, clearly, this takes a particular personality to pull it off, but he does it well. Most of us know about Zoom backgrounds, but not everyone is familiar with Zoom filters, found, by the way, in the same place under that video arrow. Okay. There are different choices there of silly things you can add to your face, such as this mustache. Most of us know about these, but when we start talking about the face filters that do lip syncing, this is a different story, right? But with a little more tech know-how, you can even become a talking potato head, another object, and an avatar with lip syncing and all. Again, now it takes a certain personality to pull this one off. But if you're interested in learning ways to set up and use these types of camera face filters, just Google how to use camera face filters on Zoom, okay? Oh, and here's a great tip, by the way, from one of those websites. Don't forget to turn this face filter off before your next professional meeting. I'd like to end with my favorite strategy, making your office hours an adventure, inviting interested students to experience something near campus with you. I've had students meet me on the steps of the Museum of Tempe History for a walkthrough, okay? In the middle of our pedestrian bridge crossing Tempe Park Lake, and even my favorite location of all, on top, the very top of a small mountain in walking distance from campus. Now you can tell from this photo that the small mountain is located right on the edge of our campus. So you'll see our stadium here. And yes, you know, if you can watch my cursor there, I will have them meet me way up on top. Okay. So the goal of these mini webinars is to just throw some ideas out there and get our creative juices flowing. Has this mini webinar inspired you to think outside the box about your office hours? Can you think of any other ways to make your office hours more appealing? Please share your thoughts with us. You can do this verbally by raising your hand. Julia will watch for that. And also you can just write your questions in Q of A if you'd rather that she present them for you.
Hi, thank you, Dr. May. I did have one question come through in the Q&A. I have a Professor Heister who wants to know if there are any face filters in Webex. I'm not sure if you're familiar with using the Webex video app.
Yes, I have never used it, but the face filters that I was talking about with the lip syncing, they're not tied to Zoom. So again, it takes a little more tech know-how, but if you want to work with those and to figure out how to get them into Webex, I'm fairly certain that Webex would do that, would support that. It would just be a matter of Googling it and figuring out how.
If you have any other questions, feel free to send them through the Q&A, and we'll be happy to go over those questions. As far as one of the questions that I had, when you have to deal with students who are taking an online course, how do you approach giving them an incentive to join for virtual office hours, which is a little bit tricky, because I actually teach an online course, and a lot of students who take online classes are doing it at their convenience. So getting them in there to actually meet with you without providing them with pizza or anything like that. Do you have any ideas on that one?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because one thing we really want to take into account with our online students is where they live, the time zone. And so sometimes it is necessary to have at least one office hour a week that you throw in the middle of the night, so that you're accessible to students who are in other time zones. This whole idea of featuring these sites on your campus, which when I do an office hour there, again, they can attend by Zoom because I will have my laptop with me, or they can attend in person. And I have classes that have a mixture. Online students could be across the world, right? And but they can attend either way. When you do these campus features, I found that the online students are super interested, and even those adventures around your campus, they start to feel like that campus is theirs. And there's something about that little city, campus town, that is special to them. And like I said, I've even had a few contact me that they're coming and they want to introduce their family to me. And their whole family, takes a road trip. And it just started out with showing these simple locations on our campus.
Thank you, Dr. May. I also had another question come in from Professor Kula. Have you ever hosted office hours with a colleague? What advantages or disadvantages might doing so provide our students? She also wanted to know, what about co-hosting with a colleague from a different division or discipline?
Okay, well, I oftentimes will co-host with a TA. If we have students who are coming in through Zoom and in person, it can make office hours a lot easier to be monitoring it that way. And what I like to turn to the TA is the more organizational things. So students are coming in for a makeup exam that needs to be proctored, then I can have the TA bring them into a private room on Zoom and work with them in that way. Sometimes the TA and I will both get involved with the student as far as discussing course material or study skills, something like that. Now, another colleague is a really interesting idea. I think it would be, it might be fun for students now and then to just have a guest colleague there that they can meet, but I don't really, the one thing I would worry about is getting too far off from our course material. I'm not sure that that person would be able to contribute to that conversation. So that's something you definitely want to take into account. Do they have a background in that area? And as you go outside your discipline, that might be a little harder to find, but it'd be very cool if you could. I think it'd be a great opportunity for students to meet another professor, certainly not on a regular basis, but now and then as a guest. Great idea.
Thank you. I did have a couple of comments come through, one from Professor Horn. I have noticed how something as simple as changing from office hours to student success hours has helped. It is something I learned from one of these webinars. I also stress that it is not for grading or committee work, but a dedicated time for my students' success. Thank you for these ideas.
Okay, I love that because we call that framing in psychology, right? How are you going to frame your office hours? And I think, that we can be really creative with that. When I meet students for an office hour, on top of a mountain, I'm like, hey, come meet me on top of the mountain. I don't usually even say the words office hours. I like the student success idea. And, it'd be great to think about that and come up with even more enticing name choices for our office hours to get that message across too, especially that they're not just for asking questions about the course material.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. I also have one last comment. While we're going through these last comments, if you do have a question, please feel free to send those through before we conclude. I do have a comment from Professor Malone. I only get students during my office hours during exam week only to hear questions about the test. However, I get some during meeting with your professor on week 1. So I think that's more so speaking to the fact that students only come when it's either they're enthused about the class at the very beginning and then at the end of the semester when they are like down to the wire and they're trying to go ahead and get through the rest of the class. Have you had experience with that? If so, how do you try to entice them back in?
Okay. So everything I talked about, that's why I've tried all these and continue with all of these different strategies. But I do, it is true that the week before an exam is, most of my exams are on Monday, but the week before the exam is definitely the busiest time. And that is when I'm especially going to have PAs scheduled with me to help out. So, there's I've got 1,200 students per semester. And so I have a staff of like 6 TAs that work with me closely and are familiar with the course material. And I'm fortunate in that way. But that particular issue of students only coming then and sitting there, having all these office hours scheduled, taking them out of my day, being sure to be sitting at my computer, and then finding myself, reading email, doing all my other work is what really prompted this kind of thinking outside the box for me. And I'm hoping that this mini webinar inspired you guys to think outside the box about your office hours. These questions sure sound like it. And I would like to thank Hawks Learning for sponsoring this mini webinar and Julia for hosting it here today. Thank you for coming, all of you. Wishing you all inspired office hours.
Thank you, Dr. May. Actually, while we were concluding, we had one last question come in. I did want to go ahead and squeeze this one in
Sure.
from Dr. Yolich, but this one says, I teach international students, and sometimes they are less likely to visit during office hours and only ask questions in class. Do you have any suggestions to help to encourage them to visit during office hours so that I can spend more time answering their questions?
Yeah, a couple of my make an adventure office hours, the ones in particular that are on our pedestrian bridge, I like to hold them in the evening. Here's that picture again, because of the beautiful lights, and I tell them I'll meet them right in the center. And also on top of the mountain here. These attract a lot of our international students because they want to take pictures. They want to take pictures for home. So I think that those features on campus, something they can share with their family, make it a point to say, bring your cameras, get some great pictures while you're up here, right?
Thank you so much. I'm going to conclude by just providing a couple more comments that came through. And thank you, Dr. May, for spending today with us. The last two comments I have is one of the instructors told their students that their office hours were open, that she works in the evening between classes on the weekends. She has them go to her virtual office and then they knock on the door and send her an email. She tells them to give a little time to get there if she's working at that time. Another instructor said that the instructors can reward students who frequently attend their office hours by awarding a badge on the college's LMS. For example, they use Moodle, so they use badges in Moodle. So if you do have an LMS portal, or your school systems portal, if there's a way that you can do those little badges or something nice within that portal, that would be helpful as well. So thank you again, Dr. May, for joining us today. It looks like we
speaking
are.
of those badges, I'm doing another mini webinar later today, if you look up in Hawks Learning, on bestowing virtual awards. Love to see you there.
Thank you, Dr. May. So it looks like we're out of time. Thank you again for joining us today. If you or any of your fellow instructors are interested in presenting for our Learning and Growing webinar, please submit your proposals to the Learning and Growing website, which I am linking in our chat right now. And once again, I want to thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.